Okay, so before we actually render out the UV template, I'm just going to make one more tweak to the UVs. Okay, so I'm just going to select the box. And let's actually change the name here too. Just call it Mailbox. Alright, so we're going to go back into the Unwrap editor window, open that up. And yeah, I just realized we're going to have a bit of a problem with our setup here when we render out our ambient occlusion pass. And that's just because I left the top and bottom of the base piece overlapping the sides of it. Okay, and for texturing that wouldn't matter because we just get the same texture, but because we're doing an AO map, we're going to get shadows projected onto our map from these little indentations here in the sides of the base. Okay, and because the UVs are overlapping, it's going to project those shadows onto the top and bottom as well. Okay, so if it was just on the bottom down here, you know, it really wouldn't matter if there was some shadow lines because you probably would never see it, but we do have this part up on the top here where you can see a bit at the top. Okay, so you might not notice it, but I think you probably would see it. And it'll look kind of weird if we have, you know, shadow lines running across the top here and they don't match up with anything. All right, it's going to look like a mistake, so I think we should play it safe and just fix the problem before we go into Photoshop. Okay. Alright, and apologies for this. If I had thought ahead, I would have, you know, figured out a different way to lay them out, so we didn't have to do this, but I didn't, so you're gonna kind of have to just fix it. Alright, and we have a couple options to fix the problem. Obviously, we could select some of the upper pieces up here and maybe scale them down a little smaller and try to fit those pieces in somewhere, but I don't really want to do that because I want to keep the upper part of the box here, which is going to be the focal point, as high res as I possibly can. Alright, so I don't really want to scale them down any smaller, and I don't want to scale down the base down here any smaller either, because then, you know, this is going to be pretty low res and the top's going to be higher res, and it's not going to look really right because it'll be, you know, pretty drastically different. Okay, so I think our best bet and our really only option is just to select the top and bottom pieces here, try to get them. Alright, we'll drag them out. So what I think I'll do is just scale them down really, really small and stick them maybe up in this space right here. Okay, and that's not ideal, obviously, because when we scale these way down, the resolution is going to, you know, be pretty bad. But again, it's probably the least noticeable part of the entire model. So if we're going to sacrifice the quality on a part, that's probably the best place to do it. Okay, so let's just grab both these guys and we'll just scale them down. All right, I'm going to go pretty small, and we'll just go over here and see if we can fit them in. Alright, so try to keep them as big as you can, but we'll just fit them in here. Okay, maybe like that. And if you want to do it a different way, that's cool, you can. But I think this is probably our best bet without losing quality on our other pieces. Okay, so I'm just going to move them up there, and we'll just say that's okay. And let's do a save now that we tweaked that. Okay, so we'll just continue on render our UV template right now. It's really easy to do that. You just go up to the Tools menu down to Render UV Template, open that up. Alright, you can set your size here, and like I mentioned before, I think I'll use a 2K, so I'm going to leave it at 2048 by 2048, and we'll leave all this other stuff at defaults, and then just hit Render UV Template. Alright, it'll pop up just like a render does, and then you save it the same way. So we'll go to the disk, go to the desktop, and just give it a name. We'll call it UVs, and do it as a JPEG, and just hit save, and OK. Alright, so that's it, it's rendered out. Let's close this stuff up, and we'll turn off the unwrap. Okay, so we got our template rendered out, so I'm just going to save one more time. So the last thing we need to do is just render out our ambient occlusion map. Okay, and there's a lot of different ways you can do that. I think I'll use mental ray just to make it a little easier, and I'm going to do this a pretty quick and simple way. I don't think we need anything too, you know, detailed or high quality for what we're doing here, so we'll just do a quick one. Alright, so the first thing I do is just open up the render dialog, and we'll just go down to the bottom of the rollout, open up the assign renderer rollout, and just assign mental ray as our renderer. Okay, and let's also open up the material editor, and I'm just going to grab a new slot here, and we'll just go to the diffuse box. Alright, I'm just going to choose ambient reflective occlusion and say OK. Alright, and that won't show up unless you assign mental ray as your renderer first. Alright, so for this, there's some options here. I'm going to leave pretty much everything at default, but I am going to up the samples just a little bit. Alright, and like I said, I'm not going to go too high quality, so maybe we'll do like 64 samples. And that's on the lower side. You could pump it up higher if you wanted to, maybe, you know, 128 or even 256. but again, I don't think it's really necessary for our model here. It's not really that complex. Okay, so we'll just change it to 64, and then we'll just go back up a level. Alright, so for the diffuse color, you could make this white if you wanted to. I think I'm just going to leave it at the default gray, and you could also pump up the self-illumination, but again, I think I'm just going to leave it like this, and we'll just do a really simple one. Okay, so let's just drag this over and drop it on our model. And if you have your own way of doing AOs, that's cool, you can just do it your own way. But if you don't know how to do it, we'll just do a quick one to make it simpler. Okay, so we'll just apply our material, and then we can close the material editor. Alright, so for the lighting in here, I'm just going to add a skylight to the scene. So let's go back to the create panel, over to lights, and we'll just choose skylight and just drop one somewhere in the viewport. Okay, and then back in the render dialog here, I'm just going to open up the Indirect Illumination tab. We'll tick on Enable Final Gather, and then we'll go down and just tick on Enable GI as well. Alright, I'm not going to really change anything in here. You could tweak the quality if you want to, but I think I'm just going to leave it at the default. Alright, so let's open up the renderer tab, and I think I'm just going to up the maximum samples here to maybe 64. Again, you can go higher if you want to. You'll have a better quality map, but it will take quite a bit longer to render. Okay, so we'll just leave this at 64 as well, just so we don't have an insanely long render time. Alright, and I think I'm just going to leave everything as it is. Again, this is like the most simple way to do this. Alright, so if you have a better way or another way you like to do it, you can just use your own method. That's cool. Alright, so we'll say that's good, and let's select our box, and I'm just going to open up the render to texture dialog by hitting 0. Okay, and you can also do that in the rendering menu up here, render to texture. So our box will be in the list here because we have it selected, so we'll just leave all this stuff at defaults and just go down to the bottom under output. Okay, and we'll just click the add button. Alright, and for our map type here, you could use ambient occlusion. I'm just going to actually do this as a diffuse map. Okay, so we'll click diffuse map and hit add element. You just want to also make sure your target map slot here is set to diffuse as well. Okay, and then we'll just pick our location we want to save to. Alright, go to the desktop, and we'll just call this maybe Mailbox AO. Alright, and I'm going to leave it as a targa, and we'll just say save, and leave this at defaults, and OK. Alright, so pretty simple, and then we just have to choose our map size here. And I'm going to do a 2K, just because that's what our diffuse texture is going to be. If you have a slower computer and you don't want to wait for a 2K map to render, you could do a 1024 and then just double size it when we get into Photoshop. You'll lose a little quality, but that's another way to do it if you really can't wait the time it takes. Okay, but I'm going to just do 2048, and we'll also tick on shadows here to make sure we get some shadows. So we just need to render it out now, and it might take a while. Probably shouldn't take too long. We're not using really high settings, but depending on how fast your computer is, it might be really quick, and it might take 20 minutes or half hour depending on how fast your rig is. So I think I'll just render it now, and I'll pause the video, and then when it's done I'll come back. Okay, so I'll see you in a bit. Okay, so it just finished rendering, and it took about 15 minutes or so that's not too bad. Hopefully yours didn't take too long to do. Alright, so let's just take a look at it. I'm just going to close the render to texture box and turn off my edges with F4. Alright, you'll notice that the map's actually on the model now. Okay, so we can actually take a look at it. So just zoom in here. And really, the occlusion map only bakes in the shadows and lighting. Alright, and you can see the shadows here. Alright, so it's really useful for adding some depth to your textures, because it's going to actually force shadows into the map, and it also helps by giving the appearance that there's dirt and grime in the corners and in the recesses. Alright, so it'll just make the map look a little more deep, and it'll also make it a little more realistic looking. Okay, and that's not looking too bad. Again, it's a fairly quick and low quality ambient occlusion map, but that's cool. I think it's just fine for what we need it for. Okay, so we'll say that's cool, and now that it's done, let's just actually do a save. Okay, and we'll just move over now and start working in Photoshop. Okay, so the first thing we're going to want to do is just set up our UV template as a guide layer. Okay, so let's do that first. I'm just going to go File, Open, find our UVs that we saved out of Max, and just open them. Okay, and I'm also just going to fit this to screen so we can see it a bit better. Alright, so yeah, we'll use this as a little template and guide. Obviously we can't use it as is though, because if we put anything behind it, it's going to be blocked by the black color here. Alright, so we'll just set this up quickly so we can actually see through it. Alright, so to do that I'm just going to go over to the background layer, hold down Alt, and double click it to make it a normal layer, and then we'll set the blend mode to screen. Okay, and what that's going to do is just make all the black transparent. Okay, so if we put something behind it, we'll be able to see through the black parts, but we'll still see our edges overlaid on top. Okay, so we'll do that, and then I think what I'll do next is just kind of lay out some color, and just so we can tell our pieces apart a little easier. Okay, so let's make a new layer, drag it down underneath our UVs. Alright, I'm just going to name that layer. You can just do that by double clicking the name, and then we'll just call it maybe UV guide. Okay, so we'll go to the new layer, and I did some tests ahead of time just to figure out some of the colors I'm going to use. So for the red, I found that this color works pretty good as a base. Okay, and you can just enter the little 6-digit code here to get it. So it's 931E24. Alright, and just keep in mind that some of the stuff in Photoshop that I do might not look right to you based on your your gamma settings and your monitor brightness and all that. It might either look too bright or too dark, so just think of it as a guide, and you can adjust the layers and the colors to where you feel it looks the best on your particular display. Okay, but for me this seems to work good, so I'm going to choose this color here. So just say OK, and then let's go to the paint bucket, and I'm just going to fill that new layer with red. Okay, and obviously we don't want red on our base or our legs and our feet up here, so I'm just going to delete some of the color off some of the parts. Okay, so I'm going to go to the selection marquee tool. Alright, we'll just drag a selection around the base, and then we'll zoom in here and go back to the selection, hold down Shift. You'll notice you get a little plus sign when you do that. Alright, so that'll let you add to the selection. Alright, so we'll just drag around these guys. Okay, just like that. And then on the red layer I'm just going to hit delete just to get rid of the red color on those parts. Okay, and then we'll go up to the top here. Alright, just going to fit the screen again and zoom in. Alright, so for this, because we have the weird angle, I'm just going to use the lasso, and I'm going to hold down the left mouse button and just select the polygonal lasso tool. Okay, and then I'm just going to click up here and just drag down the side of our piece there, the body, and across the bottom. And we should only have to do this once, so I'm just going to take my time and make sure I get it right where I want it. Alright, maybe like that. Alright, then we'll just go back along the top to the other side, click, and then go down to where we started and click. Just so we have that weird wedge shape selected. Okay, and then we'll delete that too on the red layer. Alright, just to get rid of it. Okay, so let's just click off that, fit this back to screen. Okay, and I'm just going to name this maybe paint base. Alright, and then we'll have to do the same thing with some gray. Okay, so let's make another layer. I'm going to use this gray color here. I tested it beforehand, this seems to work, so I'm going to use 4E4 F51 if you want to match it, but again you can use a different shade if you want to. Alright, so we'll just say OK, and then what I'm going to do is just go to the magic wand tool here, select the paint layer, and then just click on the red. Okay, and that's going to select all the red on that layer. Alright, then I'm going to hit Control Shift and I to invert the selection. Okay, so everything but the red is selected, and I'm just going to go to the new layer, and then we'll just fill this with the paint bucket and the gray color, just like that. Okay. Alright, just so we have kind of, the color blocked in, we can see what's the body, what needs to be painted, and what's the other pieces. Okay. So now that that's actually done, let's just actually open up the Ambient Occlusion render that we did. Okay, so I'm going to go back to Open, back to the desktop, just find our Mailbox AO and open it. Alright, this is what it looks like here. I'll just zoom in so you can see it. Alright, so you'll notice that some parts came out really, really dark and other parts are like pitch black. Okay, and that's actually correct. It's just that these parts up here are actually underneath the handle, so they're in shadow. Alright, and this is actually the bottom of the mailbox, so it's pretty much pitch black. Alright, right here, and then the inside there is being blocked from the light. Alright, and then you'll notice up here on the sides, it looks kind of weird here. And that's correct, it's just that this is actually the profile of our door pieces. Okay, so some of it's getting hit with light, the other parts here are on the inside, so they're completely blacked out and in shadow. Alright, so even though it looks a little weird, it's actually correct. Okay, and then same with up here on the feet. You'll notice that they have these black squares right in the middle. Alright, and that's just the light being blocked by our lag pieces. Okay, so it looks a little weird, but it's okay. And again, you know, this isn't the best quality, but it should be fine for what we're doing. Okay, so let's just select the whole thing, Control A, and we'll do Control C to copy it. Okay, and I'm just going to close it, and we'll go back to our map, and I'm just going to paste it above the gray layer with Control V. Okay, and let's turn off our UV layer for a second by hitting the little I. Okay, and then we'll set the blend mode for the ambient occlusion map to multiply. Alright, and you can see the benefit you get from using one. Already it looks, you know, like a lot more detailed. It has more depth, and we're getting some shadow in there. Okay, so it's usually a good idea to use an ambient occlusion if you can. Okay, so now that we got the color blocked in, I'm just going to actually start opening up some images we can overlay to just get some variation in the color and so on. Okay, so I'm just going to go File, Open. Alright, back to the desktop here. I just have a little texture source folder that I saved. Okay, and it's just got a couple different images in that I found online and that I've accumulated you know, over a couple years. Not sure where I got them all, but some of them I went and actually found specifically for this, like these Canada Post ones here. Okay, so you can either use maybe some images that you actually have yourself, or you can download this little folder from my personal website, christateonline.com, and you'll find it in the tutorial section if you want to actually use the same ones. Okay, so I'm just going to open up this painted metal one here. Alright, just open that up. Okay, and we're going to use this just to get some variation in the color of our red paint. Okay, so I'm just going to do Control A, Control C, copy it. Alright, we'll just close it. And then I'm just going to paste this above the base paint layer, the red layer. Okay, I'll just paste it on, Control V. Alright, and I'm just going to go into transform mode, Control T. Alright, I'll just move it around. And what transform mode will let you do is actually rotate images or stretch them. Alright, you can pull the handles. And when you're doing that, it's a good idea to hold down Shift and just drag on the corner. Alright, and then it's going to scale it evenly so you're not going to actually stretch the image. Okay, so I'm just going to shrink this down a bit. Alright, just want to make sure the resolution's decent. Okay, so it's always better to shrink an image down than blow it up, obviously, because when you stretch it bigger, you're actually going to lose some resolution by doing that. But by shrinking it down, it'll actually make the detail tighter together, so it'll actually be a little bit better quality. So I'm just going to stick it maybe right there and hit Enter. Okay, and then obviously we want to have some over here too, so I'm just going to do Control A and Control C and Control V. Alright, paste that back on. Okay, going to move it up here to this side, and I'm just going to go to Transform again, Control T, right click, and then we'll flip it horizontally. Alright, I'm just going to move it over. I might have to patch some of this out. I just don't want to have the tiling of this big scrape here on both sides. That's going to look kind of noticeable. Alright, so I'm just going to move it over like that maybe, and hit Enter to exit transform mode. Okay, and then we'll select both these holding Control, layer 3 and 4, and I'm just going to hit Control E to combine them onto one layer. Okay, and with that selected, I'm just going to go over here to the healing brush. Alright, and you can always hold down the left mouse button and choose different options here. Alright, so we're just going to use the actual healing brush tool, not the spot healing. Okay, and what that'll let you do is actually clone pieces of your picture and clone stuff out. Okay, so I'm just going to make my brush size a little bigger. And you can do that with the square brackets, alright, both directions. Okay, and I'm just going to hold down Alt and just click somewhere, okay, and then we'll just go in and just paint over some of this stuff here that's tiling. Alright, let go. It'll try to blend it in for you. Alright, so just get rid of anything that's really noticeable. Alright, I'll try to do this fairly quick just for the sake of the tutorial. You can take more time though and actually, you know, do a better job of it than I am. I just want to kind of get rid of some of the noticeable stuff. Alright, these guys maybe. Get rid of those, and this is going to be noticeable that it's tiling, so let's get rid of that too. Alright, you can actually use a smaller brush, it'd probably work a little better. And it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. We're going to lower the opacity down and change the blending mode anyway, so you might not notice it. Alright, you can see it looks a little blurry here, but that's probably okay. But again, feel free to actually take more time and do a better job than I'm doing. Alright, just like that, and then I'm going to actually copy that again. Or let's just hit Control V. We'll still have it copied from before. Okay, and then we'll just move this over our lower pieces. I'm just going to try to get the edge of it in between the two pieces there. Okay, so we won't have to patch anything out, and then we'll just paste again, Control V. Alright, we'll just move this one over here maybe. Alright, same thing, I'm going to try to line the edge up in between these two doors so we don't see the seam. Okay, then we'll do Control T, and for this one I'm just going to actually flip it horizontally, and I'm actually going to flip it vertically as well. Okay, just to not get the same detail on all the doors, that won't look right. Alright, so just like that, and we'll hit enter. Okay. And you can always turn your UVs back on so you can actually see where the edges of the doors are. Okay, but that looks fine, so I'll just turn that off. And obviously we want to delete this stuff up here, so let's just combine these two layers again. Select them both, Control E. Okay, and then I'm just going to go up and just select the part that's overlaying the body and just delete it. Okay, just like that. And then we can combine both of these layers together. Alright, so Control E. Alright, so just like that, and then I'm going to change the blending mode to maybe overlay. Try that. Okay, and it's going to give us some variation obviously, but that's a little too intense. Let's lower the opacity down a bit. Alright, let's go down. I just want it to be somewhat subtle, not too intense. Alright, maybe like that. And again, this will depend on, how it looks to you. You can adjust that to wherever you feel it looks the best, right? But I'm going to maybe do it at 49%, okay? And I'm just going to name these layers just so we don't get mixed up. We're going to have quite a few. Okay, so I'm just going to double click on the name of this one and just call this maybe paint color variation or something. Alright, just so we know what it is. And then this one too I didn't name. I'm just going to name this maybe gray base. Okay, and then we can also name this one AO. Alright, just to keep organized, always a good idea when you're working with a lot of different layers. Alright, so we're just going to kind of repeat the process and just overlay multiple layers of different dirt and other crap just to break up the surface a bit. Okay, so I'm just going to go back out and open up another one. Alright, and I have this rusted metal texture here. I'm going to open that up for a second. Okay, and it's pretty nasty looking. You can see it has some numbers on it here, so I'm just going to get rid of those before we copy it. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the healing brush, just shrink my brush down again. Alright, I'm just going to try to paint some of this stuff out just really quickly so you won't notice it. And again, take more time to do a better job. Alright, let's get rid of these ones here. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just don't want those showing up on our actual texture. Okay, so when that's done, we'll just copy it, Control A, Control C, and close it. Alright, and then we'll just paste this on above our color variation layer. Alright, Control V. Alright, so for this one, I'm just going to maybe tile this a couple of times. Alright, so I'm just going to move it up to the top corner, and I think I'm going to overlay this over the entire height and width of the map. Okay. So let's just Control T it, and then we'll just scale it down a little bit on the corner holding Shift. Alright, we'll do one maybe right there, Enter. Then I'm going to copy it again, Control A, Control C, Control V. Alright, and we'll just lay a couple of these next to each other. Alright, maybe like that, Control T. I'm just going to flip it horizontally. Alright, let's actually flip it vertically too. I'm just going to move it where we can patch it out a little easier. Alright, I might flip this back horizontally. Not liking what it looks like. So maybe like that, hit enter, and then we'll just combine them with Control E and just use the healing brush to kind of get rid of this seam somewhat. I'm just going to do that. I'm just going to clone from over here and just hit Alt and then click somewhere, and it'll clone from that point. Okay, it's just really quick. You can take more time if you want to. Okay, so I'm just going to copy this whole piece again. Control A, Control C, and Control V. Alright, and we'll just move this down and kind of put it underneath. let's maybe flip this vertically. Alright, could undo that. Just going to flip it around until I'm happy with where it is. Alright, so we'll flip it horizontally, see how that looks. Alright, that might be a little better, so we'll stick it like that. Okay. Alright, that looks good. Hit enter. Alright, you could also turn off some of these other layers if you want to be able to actually see what you're doing a little better. Alright, but that's probably fine, so let's combine them. Control E. Alright, I'm just going to change the blend mode. I think I'm going to try soft light on this one. Alright, and we'll just take the opacity down again. Alright, take it down pretty far. Let's do maybe 36% or so, and I'm actually going to drag this layer up above the gray base too. Okay, just so we'll get some color variation on our gray pieces as well. Alright, so just like that, let's name this. I'm just going to call it color variation 2. Alright, just to keep track. Alright, so I'm just going to keep doing this and building up a little bit of variation in the colors, and then we'll start actually adding some dirt and grime to it. Okay, so I'm just going to open up another map. Alright, and for this one, I might just try this bare metal 2 one here. Alright, open that up. Alright, this is a little nasty looking. I think I'll just use a piece of it, so I'm going to just crop it. Alright, I might just cut out the center. Alright, just want to make sure you're not going to get these rivets showing up. Alright, maybe like that. Actually, I might go right to the side and just move this over, because we have quite a dark spot over here. So I'm just going to kind of maybe take a piece like that, and we'll clean this up in a second. Alright, so let's just hit enter to crop it. Okay, and I'm just going to do that again, get rid of that red back there. Alright, and let's go to the healing brush, and we'll just get rid of the rivets here. Alright, so again, just Alt and click somewhere, and then just kind of paint it out. I just want to get rid of all these screw heads, else it's going to look kind of weird. Alright, so let's go down. And again, you could do a much better job of this than I am, but I'm just trying to be quick. Alright, not really liking the look of this over here either, so I'm going to get rid of it. And this looks kind of weird down here as well. Alright, you can see we got some screws still, so let's make sure we get rid of all those guys. Alright, that's probably okay, and again, take more time. I'm not going to worry about it too much. Alright, so we'll copy it, Control A, Control C, close it, and paste it on. And I'm going to paste it right on the top of the color variation layer there. Okay, so let's just move it up, and I'm just going to put this over the paint again. Alright, so just up on the side here, stick it there maybe. Do Control A, Control C, Control V. Alright, we'll just start layering a couple of these in, tiling it. Alright, so let's Control T this one and flip it horizontally. Alright, just to make the color match a little better. Alright, enter. Okay, and one more time, Control V. Alright, just stick it there maybe. Okay, and then we'll combine all three of these, holding Control and hit Control E. Alright, and then we'll just patch out the seams here quickly with the healing brush again. Alright, you could also use the patch tool for this, but the healing brush works a little better, I think. Alright, so just go along really, really quick. Try to hide the seam as best you can. I'm kind of making a mess of mine, but feel free to clean that up. Alright, so again, I'm not going to worry about it too much just for the sake of speed, but we'll say that's good. Okay, so let's copy it, Control A, Control C, Control V. Alright, one more time, and we'll just move it down to our doors and the top down here. Alright, just position it wherever you're happy, where you want these dings and scratches to be. Alright, maybe just like that, that looks okay. Okay, so we'll just delete part of this again, that's overlapping the upper part. Alright, delete. Okay, and then we'll just combine the two again with Control E. Alright, so just like that. And I might just name this something like, I don't know, body metal or something, just so I know what it is. Okay. And you can name this stuff whatever you want. Alright, so let's change the blending mode to, alright, that's too bright on overlays. Let's try multiply. Alright, multiply might work better. It's a little too intense, so let's take the opacity down. Alright, let's do maybe, I might do 75 or so on the opacity. Okay. Alright, and the more we build this up, we'll get a better idea of what it's actually going to look like, so we can always tweak the opacity and the blend modes later on when we can see it with all the dirt and stuff on it. Okay, so for now I'm just going to leave it like that for the paint, and our pieces up at the top here aren't really looking like metal, so I think I might just try to overlay some metal in there. Okay, so let's do that next. Alright, so back to open, and I think I'm just going to open this bare metal one. Okay. And as you can see, this one has a giant hotspot on it from a light or something, so I think I'm just going to take a little piece of it to use. Okay, so let's just maybe let's take it maybe right from here. I'm just going to take a little piece and copy it, Control C. Alright, and we'll go back over. Okay, so let's just zoom in on the top up here. And I'm just going to paste this above the color variation layer for now. Alright, so Control V. Alright, we'll just use this just to get some variation and make it look a little more like metal. Alright, so I'm just going to stick one maybe right there. Alright, it's a really small detail, so I'm not going to worry too much about it. I could scale it down a little bit maybe with Control T. Try to keep the resolution, decent. Alright, so I'm going to stick that one maybe right there. Okay, hit enter, and then I'm just going to copy it 2 more times. Control A, Control C, Control V. Alright, I'm just going to fill the rest of it in. Alright, we can always cut off what we don't need. Okay, so let's just paste another one. And stick that up there. Alright, and we're getting this bright spot right here, so I'm going to just flip that with Control T, right click, flip horizontal, just to get rid of it. Okay, and enter. Alright, so maybe just like that. Okay, and let's combine all 3 of these with Control E. And the seams don't look too bad actually, so I don't think we really need to patch anything out. But let's delete the stuff that's overlaying the body. Okay, so again I'm going to go back to the paint base layer and use the magic wand and just click on it. Okay, just like that, and then we'll just go to our metal layer up here, layer 3, and just hit delete. Okay, just to remove it on the parts we don't want to do. Alright, just like that. Alright, so let's zoom back out so we can actually see. Alright, so it looks a little more like metal, and we can always play with that a little bit more. I might just try changing the blend mode to overlay. Alright, let's take the opacity down a little bit. Let's do maybe like 70 or something on that. Okay, I want the feet to be fairly dark because they were on our reference picture. The slot up here might need to be brightened up a bit. Alright, so let's maybe do that. Alright, so I'm just going to go back to our bare metal texture and just copy this chunk again, Control C. Okay, and then let's just close that, we don't need it. Alright, so let's zoom in on the slot up on the top here. Alright, and again we can always turn our UVs on to see the actual edges of it. Alright, so I'll just paste that on here, Control V. Alright, I'm just going to move it up and just Control T, shift and drag on the corner to scale it down. And I want the slot to look a little more, like chromish color. So yeah, I'm just going to stick this over top. Alright, just scale it down a bit. Okay, and enter. Alright, and I'm just going to drag a selection just around the lower part here. And just delete, just to make sure we don't have anything overlaying our legs there. Okay, so just like that. Alright, so that looks a bit better. Just going to play with the blend modes a little bit. Let's try maybe... let's see what lighten looks like. Alright, lighten looks pretty good. I want it to be a little brighter, so we'll leave this on lighten, and I'm just going to leave the opacity at 100%. Okay, so let's maybe name these guys to keep organized. Alright, we'll name layer 3 just something like, I don't know, foot metal or something, just so we know it's for the feet. And let's just name this one slot metal or something. And again, name this whatever you want, as long as you know what it is. It doesn't matter. But let's just maybe save this just in case we have a crash. Alright, so I'm just going to save it maybe onto my desktop, and we'll just call it Mailbox Diffuse. And I'll just leave it as a PSD for now and save.